Greetings, people of the internet. This is Scott with CircWorks, and this is Pro versus Con, pro tips for conventions. So if you are interested in exhibiting at a comic convention, an anime con, or any type of pop culture event, I'm here to share with you some things I learned along the way, some of my experiences, and hopefully you can apply that to whatever you're doing. And whether that's your first convention or you've been doing it for a while, I think there's always new things we can learn from each other, and hopefully I can learn some things from you too as well. And that's what the comment sections are for, but we'll talk about that at the end of the show. So what are we talking about today? We are talking about con etiquette. You know, etiquette, like when in doubt, pinky out, that type of thing. It's really not that complicated as far as conventions go. A lot of the stuff is really common sense, but some of it bears repeating, and we need to go over it to remind ourselves of a few things. And there are other things that we maybe didn't even consider that aren't apropos, so to speak. So let's go into it. Con etiquette. What is that? So we go to a convention, we're there to have fun, we're there to, meet and talk to people, have a good time, and hopefully, maybe earn a little money. And so just first off the bat, these are tips for exhibitors. There's a lot of other information out on the web as far as just if you're going to a con just as an attendee, things you shouldn't do and shouldn't do, like should do or shouldn't do. You don't want to haggle with the exhibitors. You don't want to insult the exhibitors. You don't want to tell them that their work is not valuable or it's too expensive or anything like that. We're not going to concentrate on that stuff. If you're looking for that, you can find that information on the web, and maybe I'll talk about that on a future episode. But I'm trying to kind of gear this just for people who are exhibiting, because it seems like that information, there's a lot less, and maybe that's because there's a lot less exhibitors than there are people attending shows. But anyway, so we're there to have fun, but as usual, there are things that disrupt our fun, like rules and things. Rules! So yeah, every con have a set of rules, and then there are kind of unwritten rules, and we'll talk about those. But these rules are made just because there's a lot of people there, and hopefully to make as many people. You're not going to make everyone happy, but as many people happy as possible. Does that make sense? I don't know. All right. So the first thing you're going to do when you go to a con, when you sign up and everything, they're probably going to give you like an exhibitor packet or a vendor's guidelines or something like that. So you want to read through that. You want to know what the actual technical rules for the cons are, and you want to sort of follow those as closely as possible. So there's that. That's the first thing you want to do, is just familiarize yourself with the con in particular, because different cons run differently. Some things are okay at certain cons, some aren't okay at others. And there are things that they sort of let slide at some conventions, but it's still kind of iffy whether you want to participate in that or whatever, and we'll talk about some of those things anyway. Other than first reading that rule book, familiarizing yourself with the convention, one of the main things you want to do is just be a good neighbor. And that is to your fellow exhibitors, the people around you, because you're going to be by them pretty much the duration of that con, and you probably will see them again. If you continue to do cons, you're going to see these people again. So it really helps to, just be cool, It's kind of like when you move into a new neighborhood, in the old days, they bring it like a casserole over or something like that. You don't have to bring a casserole, but donuts work. You don't have to do that, but that is something you can do. If you have donuts, if you buy a dozen donuts that you're going to eat and share them with people, but just generally be cool to the people around you, because it's good to have company while you're there. A lot of times, if you're going there by yourself, you may need help out, or you may want to offer your help to other people if they are in need of it. So yeah, make friends with your neighbors and everything, and just be cool, like Fonzie, right? So as far as your neighbors go, you don't really want to look at them as competition. And sure, at a con there are only like X number of attendees with X number of dollars in their pockets to spend. So you are kind of, in some ways you are vying for those dollars. But most people, a lot of people at cons will have, hopefully are selling original or different types of items and things. Now, if you are selling a baby group print and the person next to you is selling a baby group print, then maybe there is some competition involved, and maybe then it's going to just add up to who has the better baby group print or who has one for a less price or whatever. But that's why I try to concentrate on some items and things that you can't find everywhere else. But anyway, as far as, you know, pricing and things like that, we talked a little bit about pricing on another episode, and some of this stuff is going to repeat because it is just etiquette the way you price certain things. But one of the things you don't want to do is you don't want to undercut your neighbors or whatever as far as prices. They're not purposely undercut. I mean, everyone has the right to, you know, charge whatever they want for their products and things like that. But, you know, keep in mind that with your with whatever products you're making, you are there to try to, you know, at least make your table back, and hopefully more than that. And it's not just the cost of whatever you're printing. So if you get a print printed for $5 and you sell it for what's $8, oh, I make $3 off a print or whatever. So, you know, lowballing and price cutting everything just to you know, outsell a neighbor, you know, it's really hurting you just as much as it's hurting anyone else, because it's just going to, in the end, it's going to devalue everyone's work. And you know, we spend a lot of time working on you know, artwork and things like that, and you have to consider all the things that go into it, not just how much the print cost or whatever. So for example, I had introduced a new product. It was some messenger bags with a design on it that I created, and I was talking with one of the other artists, and he had some messenger bags too. So some of these items, they kind of do crossover. Like I said, I try to do original things, but it's not just the item itself. It's sometimes whatever the artwork is on the item, whether that's, you know, obviously prints or whatever. But so I had the messenger bags, and you know, I thought I was getting a pretty good deal when I bought the actual bags, and of course I had to pay to have the artwork printed on the bags and all that. So in the end, I was charging, you know, they're pretty nice messenger bags, but I'm charging like $40, not unheard of, a pretty good price. But I was talking to one of the other vendors, and I had a pretty good rapport with him and everything. I had been talking to him, so he was selling his messenger bags for around $30, and I'm like, how do you sell these things for so cheap? So he's very open, and he says, well, I get them for a really good deal, and he was telling me, you know, where he got them and what channels you have to do to get them for that price and everything. And so yeah, that was really cool. But you know, the one thing I didn't do is go back to my table and mark mine down so they would be, you know, the same price as his. For one, I paid a different price than he did, so I need to recoup that cost, and it's not doing me good just to slash that price just so I can sell them at the same speed that he's doing. Now in the future, I'm going to look into these other avenues of getting these items, and then hopefully offer a little better price and still make the same, you know, profit margin. But you know, that didn't stop my bags from selling. People still bought it because of what was on it. You know, I do a lot of, you know, real geeky type, you know, it's like mad science and retro future stuff and everything. So I have a lot of the people, my returning customers are like, you know, people that are involved in sciences or science teachers, things like that. But one of the gals who bought this particular bag, it said, you know, it was Rocket Surgery Institute was a logo and everything. And she's actually a rocket scientist. She works on rockets. That's what she does. So it doesn't really, I mean, the fact that the price wasn't really the determining factor. It was on it. So take that into consideration. You don't want to really just either out of spite or, you know, it's usually not out of spite, but you know, you just, again, it's marking down prices so low that you're just making a little bit here and there, whether you don't want to take so much stuff back if you're out of town or whatever that is. It's really gonna you know, come back to you, and it's just gonna hurt the whole, you know, everyone doing this. So you don't want to do that. So what's next? Whether you have an artist alley table or a larger booth, you've got a certain amount of space that you're allowed to work within. And that goes for, you know, your backdrops or your table display and all that. And I'm always an advocate of, you know, again, look at your packet, see, you know, how high you can go or whatever. And if you need the space or whatever, go as high as they'll let you. but you don't want to go over into other people's space. So usually there are no booths. It's not a double decker type situation where there's booths above you, so you're not really encroaching on people's display that way. But as far as like your table out here, you want to make sure your products aren't going over into other people's, or you have displays that kind of hang off or whatever like that. And again, that's kind of common sense, but it's one thing about that I want to talk about, because it's close to me and it's kind of a situation that I just ran into, and so it's kind of a pet peeve of mine, and something that I may have talked about before, I don't quite remember. But as far as these, when you go to these larger displays, that's real cool, but keep it on your own side, facing towards the booth, your booth and your audience, because as you can see here. Okay, so you see here is this is my booth down below, and above it you see a double-sided banner from another vendor that was behind me. And the problem with this type of thing is there's so much going on at conventions, and even though the product offering from this other company behind me and mine are completely different, it's like for the attendees it's like sensory overload, and there's so much to look at that they don't really determine the difference. So I had people coming up to my table and just like lambasting me about some comic book character and how I treated them in a comic that I had never even heard of. And I'm just like, I'm kind of in my back of my head, I'm like, okay, is this guy crazy? What is he talking about? And he's like, and he looks up and then he looks sort of down at my sign, and he's like, oh, you're not so-and-so. And I'm like, no. And then I look back. And previous to that, I hadn't really even seen the banner up there. Usually I'll try to go a little high, and if they already had their banner up there and it was facing my booth, I would have put my black backdrop a little higher to block that out. But yeah, that's just that's really not something cool to do. I thought that was something most people knew not to do. And I guess I don't know when they had that banner manufactured or whatever. Maybe they do different kinds of events. In certain situations, it's fine. Like Dark Horse had a booth there. They had hanging from the ceiling this kind of big round banner that kind of went around the whole, their whole booth. But the thing is, at least at Phoenix Comic Con where I was exhibiting, the booths are set up like this. This would be like an overhead view. So each one is a corner booth. So Dark Horse bought this whole section. So there's not a problem with them advertising all around that because they've purchased all that space. The people behind me didn't purchase any of my space. I probably, it would have been nice for them to throw a few bucks my way since I'm advertising for them. But anyway, yeah, you don't want to advertise facing away from your booth unless you've purchased that area as well. Yeah, it's not something, it's not something you should do. And, some people don't think about that. A lot of cons do have rules against that. I guess Phoenix doesn't. So in the future, I'm going to kind of pay more attention and be a little more proactive and make sure if that becomes a problem to, make my booth go a little higher. But at this particular booth, I had a certain X amount of product and I didn't really need to go as high as that. Now, as I get more products, it's probably not going to be a factor because I'll just go, I'll just go as high as they'll let me, and just to fill in, all that space. Now with my sign, as you probably saw from before, the sign that was below it, the Circwork sign, it kind of goes down below, but there are some booth designs that I'll do where we've got kind of these funky, pipes and tubes and things like that, and I'll have the sign above that, and it kind of, in earlier renditions of my booth, it would go above, but the back of my sign was just the shape cut out. It wasn't like the reverse of my letters, and it was just all black, so I'm not like advertising my stuff to the people behind me. And then in the end, when I found out that sign sticking up, it just gets so confusing with all the lights and everything else that's above that I decided to bring it down for the black backdrop. But anyway, yeah, keep your stuff, and that goes double for prints. So if you've got your wall of prints and everything, don't flip. If you go so high, don't flip your prints on the back, because people are maybe coming to some other guy who may be selling prints too and asking, oh, can I have that print? And they're not even selling that print. So yeah, don't do that. Not cool. Now, there are a few things that I talked about in my episode on, I said pricing before, but I don't think it was an episode on specifically pricing. I think it was more like selling. And I'll probably do a future episode on what's a good way to price and price margins and things like that. But this was an episode I did just on ways of interacting with your audience and trying to pitch your product and everything. So there's some things that I talked about there that I am going to repeat here because it goes along with the whole etiquette angle that we're talking about today. One of them is don't be a carnival barker. Don't be out there, loud and trying to draw people in. Hey, step right up, check this out. I've got this awesome comic, whatever, it's going to be worth $1 million and all this stuff. And, tone it down a bit, you don't need to be doing all that. Wait till people come to your table and make eye contact, and then you can talk to them about whatever. A lot of that has to do with attitude and personality and things like that. I talked about that before, where some people can get away with it. But as a general rule, that's not something you want to do. And you don't want to be pushy. You don't want to be the used car salesman, what can I do to put you in this comic book today type of thing. People just don't, I find, and I've definitely, it bothers me. I just don't like pushy salesmen. If somebody's interested in buying something from you, they'll buy it. If not, then they won't. And and just forcing them into or guilting them into or just go staring down their throat or whatever like that. Just not something you want to do. So another thing that I talked about before that I'm going to bring up again is don't poach potential customers from other tables. If they're talking to somebody over there, and even if it's a conversation they're bringing up that they like something that you actually have, maybe even they don't have it, you don't want to jump in and no, he doesn't have that, but I've got that right over here. Come over here, check this out. You don't want to do that. You just wait till they're done talking with whoever, and if they walk by, then you say, oh, I overheard you talking about that you like so-and-so, and I've got a print of so-and-so right here. You want to check that out? So yeah, don't poach customers from other places. And as far as just interacting with people and everything, attendees, don't ignore people. If you are sitting there, if you're talking to, say, if I'm talking to another potential customer or attendee or somebody I know, an artist or whatever, and somebody comes around and they're looking, don't ignore people. If I'm talking to somebody and wait till there's a pause in the conversation, and I'll just like, hey, how you doing? And then I'll go back to who I'm talking to, and that does one of two things. One, it lets the people know that I know that they're there and that I'll get to them as soon as possible, and it also lets the person that I'm talking to know not to monopolize my time, and that I've got other people kind of here waiting. And so, if you're lucky enough to have somebody else at your table to kind of help you out and handle other customers and things, that's a great thing. That's not always the case. So just be cognizant of that and what's going on around you, and let everyone know that you'll get to them and all that kind of thing. The other thing, as far as ignoring customers, if you are sketching, if you're doing sketches, be sure to look up every now and then, make sure people aren't around. Don't just sit there with your head down drawing. And I know a lot of people, artists especially, are introverted and things like that. But if you're going to be doing this, you really you have to try to interact with people. So, look up from time to time, just say hi or whatever if people are walking by. The other thing is cell phones. Don't just sit there with your face in your cell phone. A lot of times, I use my cell phone, all the time, because I'll be tweeting something or letting people know where I am at the convention. But I'm always kind of looking up, and if somebody walks by, I can set that phone down and continue my social posting or whatever later. So what's next? I think in general, a lot of this stuff kind of falls in the category of just being respectful to your neighbors, being respectful to the attendees, being respectful to the con organizers, being respectful to the volunteers. They're there to help you out. Now, maybe a show's not running as great as you like, or whatever, you've got issues. Don't bring those up to the people, that are there just to enjoy the con. You can wait till after the show and sort all that kind of stuff out or whatever. But yeah, treat people with respect. As far as, attendees and things that are people that are there to check out your stuff and potentially, make a purchase from you. Be cool to them. Don't be a snob. You don't want to be like in Pretty Woman, where she goes into that store and they basically take one look at her and they send her walking. Then she comes back after this long shopping spree, holds up all these bags and like, you work on commission, right? Big mistake. So, you don't want to be that person. I mean, there's all kinds of people that come to these cons. Maybe you're not so big on cosplay or whatever, but you know that you don't know who cosplayers are or what they're into. They may totally be into what you're selling, or whatever it is. Treat people with respect, and don't assume based on what people are into. I mean, some guy can come up to me, I sell, most of my stuff is real family friendly, whatever, very kid centric and stuff like that. But maybe some guy comes up to me, a biker guy, he's got face tattoos all over the place. That doesn't mean he's not interested in what I have to offer. You never know. I mean, there's, different people are in different things, and you never know. And one thing that kind of, was kind of a dose of reality for me was I just introduced, this last con, I introduced some bow ties. And I'm making the bow ties, and my daughter's kind of helping me out, and she's asking me questions, and she's saying, well, you should make like bows for girls and stuff like that, hair bows and stuff. And I'm like, well, I don't know if I can sell those for as much, because people tend to pay a little more for the bow ties. There's a lot of work going into them, and just the way they're done, it's a little different, and it might look weird to have, my daughter's 10, so I'm not really I'm thinking this, I'm not explaining this to all her, but, I may have talked about some of that stuff, but anyway, so, and to see next to each other, they kind of look the same, but there's a lot more work into the bow ties than there is just like a hair bow. And the price, it just looks a little, so I'm like, I'm not sure if I want to do that, but her whole intention was you should offer something for girls too. And I was kind of on that mindset too. And maybe some of that came from me and rubbed off on my daughter or whatever. But the one thing I found in when I started selling these bow ties is I was selling more to women than men. To whether they're buying them for themselves, whether they're buying them for somebody else or whatever, they seem not just buying, but just in general interest. I had just as many women walk by my table and go, "Oh, bow tie is cool," and so I sold just as many, if not more, to women, and that was something that I didn't really think about, and I was wrong in assuming that, I guess. But I learned my lesson, and it's cool because that opens just a brighter demographic for me. So just don't assume based on gender or anything like that what people are into, how much cash they have to spend or whatever. You never know. Just treat everyone with respect. I mean, it's kind of it's kind of the golden rule, but sometimes not everyone thinks like that. I don't understand these places that these high-end places where it's almost like they purposely hire people to kind of be rude and mean, and somehow that makes their product better because of that. I've never understood that. So don't be like that. So what else is there? I think that might be it. Oh, there's one other thing I wanted to talk about. And this one's kind of not so cut and dry. I'm going to tell you sort of my opinion on it. I'll leave it up to you to decide how you want to handle this certain thing. But on a topic of like trading, like with other artists, like you go to a show, you've got stuff for sale. You've got other people that you might like their work. They've got stuff for sale. And how do you kind of broach the subject of trading with other artists? To me, I don't really do a lot of trading, and I'm not against it, but I guess I wouldn't go up to somebody and ask if I could do a trade with them. If somebody came to my table and was going to purchase something, like I actually had another artist who I had just met at this last show. He came up and he was telling me, "Oh, I really like your booth. I like your stuff. I like what you're doing here." He came back, bought some stuff from me. Now I could have at that point said, "Well, do you want to do a trade?" Because he already approached me. He already approached me liking my stuff. I know I like his stuff. And so that might have been a good time to do that. But I just told him, you know what? You're probably going to get this money back anyway because I'll probably be over your table. And I did. And I went back there and I'd probably even spend more money than he spent at my table. So for me, I think I'll just go probably, if there's something I like, I'll probably just buy it. Now, a lot of people, that's one of their favorite part is like trading stuff back and forth, and I can definitely see that. But I guess I go back to like when I was a kid, when me and my friends, we want to do a sleepover or spend the night at somebody's house. It was always, my mom always said, "You are not allowed to ask to spend the night at somebody's house. They have to offer it." So that, I guess that sunk into my head. So for me, it's kind of the same thing. And of course, as you're a kid, you're like with your friends and like, I want to spend the night, but I can't ask. Can you ask your mom if I can spend the night? And you work things out like that. But yeah, I would kind of wait till somebody asked me if they wanted to do a trade first. I probably wouldn't unless it's somebody, if it's somebody that I really know, like there are certain artists that I know well enough where I could do that, and there wouldn't be a problem. So that's, again, I'm kind of leaving this one up to you, but the one thing I would say is if somebody does not want to do a trade or they're just not up for it, don't get offended. Don't demand that they do a trade. Don't get all, hurt about it. Like, why wouldn't you trade with me? My stuff's not good enough? This type of thing. You don't know what the situation is. You don't know how much money they made at a con. You don't know how much they paid for that particular thing. Maybe what you are trading for, maybe it cost them a lot more to get in production or whatever than what you have. You don't know. So don't get upset if somebody doesn't want to do a trade if trading's your thing. So yeah, I think that might be all the things I want to talk about. Now, I'm sure there, like always, there are things that I probably left out, or things that I didn't go into enough, or things that maybe, in your opinion, I got totally wrong. And if that's the case, let me know. That's what the comment section's for on YouTube. So if you have any other things that I did leave out, just leave me a comment, and maybe we can keep a little dialogue going and just add to this thing, because I can't think of everything, and there's certain situations I just haven't occurred to me yet that maybe other people have experienced. So let's talk about that in the comment sections. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more of these videos, subscribe to my channel. And with that, happy con going, and that is all.